Hi everybody, so today we're going to be looking at how I create characters and how you kind of differentiate a character from an observational drawing of a person. So to me, a character, the way I would create a character is they would be simplified and they would be stylized, and they might be a very specific character in a children's book. They might have a name, a personality, or they might be more generic and anonymous and used to convey a particular message or a mood or a feeling. And I'm going to show you some examples of those in a minute, but it's something I really love doing in my work. You know, I've got lots of kind of examples in my sketchbook of just playing around creating characters, but I know that this is something people really struggle with. People say, you know, how do I edit? How do I stylize? How do I know what to include and what not to include? So I'm going to show you that in this video. So first of all, I'm going to show you a few different examples of characters that I have created. So to start with, we have the character of Miss Pettifor, and this is a children's book series that I illustrated. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see. Okay, so this is Miss Pettifor. So she's a character, and I actually had the privilege of developing her character and all the other characters in the book and her cats, and basically I got the manuscript and some notes about how she looked, and then I went through the process of trying out lots of different versions, sketching her lots of times, which I might see if I can just find that. Okay, these have all been in a cupboard and they've got a little bit squished, but this was my very first sketch of Miss Pettifor. So we had these descriptions like she was tall and skinny, she had this messy bird's nest hair in a bun, she was kind of lively and fun and whimsical, and there isn't a specific period mentioned in the books, but it's very nostalgic. It's clearly set in the past. So initially we were thinking kind of Victorian, but then we thought, if she's Victorian, how are we going to see her long skinny legs? Like there's a description saying her legs are like a rope with a knot in the middle with her bony knees. So we had to see her legs. So then Victorian but short dress wasn't really working, but this was my first sketch and I did work that up to artwork. And then we kind of realised that this wasn't working. There were elements we liked about it, like the cats. And this is what I sent to the publishers at the very beginning of the process. And then we then decided to go for a more kind of 1950s look, kind of tea dresses and cardigans, which really worked for the character. So more like this. Her face is not right, but yeah, just kind of trying out little kind of cardigans with cats on and these whimsical dresses. These were some very early sketches for her face, which have got squished in my cupboard, which is truly terrible. But this is starting to develop her character, so her just drawing her face again and again, different expressions, and I've just put a little star next to the ones that I feel have potential. And then I did a painted version of that, which is a bit better. So yeah, I did a painted version of that, and you can see consistency is very important. So I've drawn different outfits, but her hair is the same colour in each one, her face is the same colour, her lips are the same colour, and started, I think these are the ones I liked, because she had to have a very specific feel. You know, she wants to feel sharp and alert, but not sly. You know, she's thin and kind of wiry and energetic. So this was some of the process of developing her. And again, you know, developing her cats. And we actually have a character page right at the beginning. So introducing Miss Pettifor and then introducing her cats. And all the cats have names and descriptions, and the cats have to look exactly the same throughout the whole book. So consistency and being able to replicate them is really important. But yeah, in terms of creating a character, there is a level of stylization and exaggeration. So, you know, arms and legs that are bendy, you know, like in this image, for example, you can kind of see how long and bending, exaggerated her legs are, which is giving her this sense of kind of energy and whimsy, and she's just about to float off into the sky. So yeah, kind of really focusing on personality and conveying a feel and a mood, rather than creating very scientifically accurate drawings of cats, because cats don't do this. So I just had to kind of figure out how I was going to arrange them like this. You know, and for this character, she's very round, her face is very round, her hair is very round, her bosom's very round, she's very kind of round and soft and squat, and that's kind of goes with her personality. So yeah, that's what I would be thinking about when designing a character, making them feel very, very specific. You're not going to mix up Miss Pettifor with any other character in the book, and if you see her out of context, you will know it's Miss Pettifor. She has a name, she has friends, she has a life, she has likes and dislikes. She is a person, a character that I've created. But I draw people in lots of my work for lots of different projects, so away from children's books characters, I often draw people for editorial work, so I've got some examples here. So these people have a slightly different feel to the work of Miss Pettifor. They are not so lively and kind of rubber-limbed. They feel a bit more calm and a bit more sophisticated. So this is a magazine for adults, it's not a children's book. Everything in terms of the colours feel a bit more muted, but also quite stylised. And these people, they're not completely anonymous, but at the same time, you don't necessarily feel like, oh, this is a character, it's a person, they've got a name, they've got likes and dislikes. I would recognise that person again in a different context. These people are just here to convey the message of the article, which is about making time to meet up with friends in person and talk, and the importance of connection. So they are conveying that message, and they are designed to kind of appeal to a particular demographic, so kind of women in their 30s, I guess. So we've got various women, fairly stylish, but yeah, they're not as much of a character as, say, Miss Pettifor is. They're a little bit more anonymous, but they're here to convey the message of the article, basically. And then we have people in licensing, and this is kind of the complete opposite to Miss Pettifor, because these people need to be as stylised and as anonymous as possible. So these people are here to convey a mood and a feeling. So for this one, it is a kind of wellness and productivity planner. So they're just people doing different activities, and they're conveying a mood. They're part of the colour palette. You know, for me, they feel quite aspirational, quite cool, but they're very, very stylised, very simple. You know, their faces are quite calm. They're not very expressive. They're the features are very small. Yeah, we've got these very kind of calm, yeah, very calm, not overly expressing a particular emotion. They don't feel like characters that have a name and a life and likes and dislikes. They're just conveying this mood, this idea of wellness and productivity. And that's why they work well as a repeat pattern, and they have broad appeal, and they're not distracting. And the same with this one. These people, these little ladies, are very, very simple. You know, I've drawn them quite simple, and they're quite stylised, which means that their body's kind of creating nice shapes, the way legs are kind of reached out and tucked in, and these kind of these smooth curved lines. And they're representing this kind of ideal of being an artist, this idea. I don't look like that when I'm painting, I don't think any of us do, but they kind of represent, yeah, an idea of being an artist. So they are decorative motifs, and I've really had fun with the stylisation, with painting them in portrait and creating these lovely simplified shapes with their legs, with their bodies, with kind of playing with oversized jumpers, with curved lines, with the simplification of the legs and creating these kind of bold shapes. So I've really had fun with the simplification. So all of these examples are a long way from creating a direct observational sketch that's just trying to capture people, how they actually look. In all of these, I've really stylized them, and for me, being able to simplify and stylize people is an important skill, and it's a big part of my work as an illustrator, and it's a big part of my style. So I'm now going to demonstrate how to do that. So this lady might be familiar to you. I painted her for a tutorial at the beginning of the year, looking at drawing people, putting them in settings, that kind of thing. And this is an observational drawing, and whilst it is slightly stylized, it's quite true to life. When I've looked at her proportions, the sense of movement, it's not overly stylized, it's not overly exaggerated. I've tried to look at where her arms actually are in terms of relationship to her body, where her chin is in relationship to her shoulder. I haven't kind of played fast and loose with those proportions. However, I am going to do that today. So I thought it'd be really fun to show you the difference between a very direct observational drawing and turning that person into a character, what the difference is in the process. And I thought it'd be good to do a person I've already drawn so that you can really see the difference. So, and I just like this lady. So let's say I wanted to make her into the character for a children's book. Maybe she is the lovely lady that lives next door who goes on adventures. Maybe she's got a little bit of a secret, maybe she can do magic, or she just goes on adventures. Maybe she had some kind of past. She used to be a spy and now she's just a sweet old lady baking buns, but sometimes she gets called back into the action. Who knows? But I'm going to make her into a character. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So this is the original image, which you can see. So that's the lady, and we can see how this painting compares to the photo, that it's fairly true to the original image. And now I'm just going to demonstrate how I could stylize that and work from a photo and stylize them, which is a useful skill, especially if you would like to do children's books or any kind of illustration, you know, licensing or magazines. But, you know, for me, it's nice to be able to look at a photo of my son and then turn him into a children's book character rather than just doing a direct observational sketch. So, first thing is we're going to exaggerate, and I'm going to think about, do I want her to feel rounded and plump and friendly? Do I want her to feel kind of skinny and lively? Do I want her to feel angular? Do I want her to feel kind of strong and bulky? Yeah, for me it's the first option. I want her to feel kind of rounded and soft and plump and happy, but also have a little spring in her step as well. So first thing, starting with the face, there's no gap in between her chin and her neck. I'm going to add one in, I think. I'm going to see where it goes. So we've got this nice kind of, I'm going to have to press a bit harder than usual so you can see what I'm doing. I kind of got a shape like that. Her hair comes in. We've got her hat. I feel like she needs a little bit of a twinkle in her eye. Got to get that hat right. And then nose, I'm going to do a little upturn. I need to be cautious of not making her too young though, so I don't want to make her neck too long because that's going to make her look too young. So this arm, when I was drawing it here, we've got a mixture of kind of straight and curved lines. I'm going to make the whole thing more curved, I'm going to kind of swoop her arm round like that, and I can adjust this, but I'm going to swoop it round. Her bag's important. She's holding onto that red bag very tightly. And then legs, we've got kind of one going back, one going forwards, and again just simplifying these lines and making them kind of more curved. So we've decided that she's going to be kind of soft and curved and rounded. So this back heel, I'm going to lift it up higher to give her a little bit of energy and exaggerate that kind of step. And then the feet, they're kind of coming slightly towards us, slightly away. I'm going to simplify them and put them in profile because it's just easier. She's got her sandals on. Got that leg going behind. Maybe the red bag's a bit big, but I feel like the red bag is important. And again, trying to keep the arms curved, thinking about the hand on the walking stick. I don't want to edit that out because I think that is important to include. Maybe I've made this arm too big. You can always adjust as you go along. I'm using a pencil. And the walkie stick's kind of coming forwards energetically. Right, this arm needs to be smaller, but I'm otherwise quite happy with how she's looking. So then that's her blouse is a little bit bigger. And just how I stylise people, I tend to proportionally give them quite small hands and quite small feet. Just what works for me. I think you find your own style. One thing I would say that people struggle with is head size. I would definitely say be intentional with the size of people's head and be consistent. There's nothing wrong with giving people small heads. For some illustrators, that's a big part of their style, to have like a really big body that takes up a lot of the space and then a little head. That's very much part of their style, but it just needs to be intentional and it needs to be consistent. For children's books, the convention is larger heads so that you can see their expressions, so children know what their mood is, what their personality, so they can recognise their facial expressions. So proportionally a larger head is what we would do for children's books. And if she's going to be a children's book character, she needs a fairly large face. I might take a little bit off the chin here, so we'll be looking a little bit too sharp, maybe for a lady of her age. And then the lips kind of upturned. I'm going to put in some wrinkles. I'm going to put in her eyes. There's her hair, kind of exaggerating the flick up of the hair. The rosy cheek. And then her hat, I feel like the hat gives her some personality as well. Little dimple on the elbow. And then we have something that starts to feel like a character. And if I was developing her as a character for a children's book, I would draw her again and again, and I would refine things, and I would get things right, and I would try things in a different way. I think it's important to get a sense of what this bag, where you have a sense of where her body's kind of ending, which is probably about here. But as you can see, very, very different to this one. So why is it different? Because in some areas I've disregarded what I can see. So for example, I've ignored the fact that her shoulder is up higher compared to her face, and I've really simplified it. I haven't got this kind of shape here. I've done this nice kind of smooth swoop shape. You could also go for a kind of, you know, a circle and then lines for the neck, but I quite like doing a kind of swoop and not having too much definition between the neck and the neck and the body. It makes the head not feel like just a ball kind of stuck on a neck. But yeah, and then I could draw her again if I wanted. So start to think about maybe different ways of drawing her, different eyes. How to put the wrinkles in without it making her look kind of, you know, dour or displeased. Making sure that she does look older. I kind of wish she was wearing glasses because that's always a great signifier. Like a little pair of specs, which she doesn't have them on in real life. But maybe I could just put some specs on and that helps convey that mood. So yeah, we could just have a play around here thinking about how we could draw her, kind of making sure she feels older but not too old, still lively. Maybe kind of straight on. Giving her some glasses. I know she doesn't have glasses, but they're just kind of working for the character. And everything's kind of curved lines because it's part of the simplification process, but it's also part of the character. So her hair's got these lovely kind of curved lines coming in. We've got this little button nose. We've got these rosy cheeks. I've got a little chin coming kind of down, just curved lines again into the shoulders, very curved neckline. She's going to have these kind of, you know, floral motifs again, lots and lots of curves. The hat. Maybe looking down slightly. Maybe try her without her hat on. Again, kind of thinking about this signature hair. Again, kind of keeping the neck defined but short. Maybe putting a little chin in. What's she doing? Maybe she's reading a book. Oh, I hate drawing people reading books. It's the worst thing actually. What to do with the fingers. I always forget, how do you actually hold a book? Okay, like that. And then kind of simplifying the arms. So again, just a kind of swooping curve. Let's kind of the book a bit more of an angle. Maybe resting on a table with a cup of tea. And then we do start to get a little bit of a sense of character with her. So yeah, this is how I would start to develop a character for a children's book. So I would draw her multiple times. I would make a deliberate decision about the line quality and how that's going to express her personality. So for me, it's about everything being rounded and smooth and having these smooth, continuous lines, rather than sketching more like this, where you've got kind of more angles and lots of little straight lines and, I'm holding my phone, lots of little straight lines and curved lines, and it's more closely observed from life, and I'm putting in shadows and shading, and this is about kind of ignoring all that, but then instead emphasising personality. And I feel like I'm kind of getting somewhere with these two, that the personality is coming out, and it's kind of getting quite a nice shape there with the head, and putting in like just the little chin. So yeah, that is how I would sketch if I was sketching a character rather than something that was more of a straight up observational sketch. And what if this lady was the reference for somebody that was going to be in a magazine article? Or what about licensing? Maybe I'm doing a busy scene for a jigsaw puzzle and I want to sketch this lady. I probably wouldn't sketch her like that. I've actually found with licensing, so things like greetings cards, jigsaw puzzles, that if I make the people feel too much like characters, it's kind of distracting, and actually I want them to be more stylized, more anonymous, so they just kind of fit in with the background, create an overall mood, and keep the appeal of the item really broad, because that's what I want. You know, when you're reading a book, you want to know that character and understand them. When you're buying a jigsaw puzzle, you just want a lovely image and you want it to have broad appeal. So if I was going to draw her and she was just going to be somebody in a crowd scene for a jigsaw puzzle, maybe, then how would I do that? How would I do it differently? So I would simplify. I wouldn't exaggerate her movement like this, and maybe not so many curved lines. I would just so we've got that step. You can see my sketching is very different. I've got a lot more straight lines. And I want to use as few lines as possible, really. Just kind of sketching first of all to get everything kind of roughly in the right place. And then putting the head in. And I find turning people to the side slightly helps when I'm stylising them, so having them in profile. So I'm going to try drawing her in profile. And the hat's quite low, so I can't see too much of the face. And I could do a little dot eye like that. So I'm going to kind of neaten it all up now. So way more straight lines than my children's book approach and less kind of energy, but I'm still simplifying. So when I'm going over these rough lines, I can smooth them out and simplify at this point. I could probably simplify that arm a little bit more and just make the lines feel kind of confident and bold. Just got a little eye there, or something I do sometimes is I just give people little closed eyes as well, like they're just in their own world, and it makes them feel even more kind of anonymous. I feel like I need a little bit of shadow there. That's too much. But yeah, so that is how I would sketch that lady if she was going in the background of a busy scene. So we've got the same lady 3 different ways. So that is kind of observational. We've got children's book, and then we've got for licensing, we've got much more kind of heavily stylized and simplified, but we can see how we are still using this as reference. So even if you're working in a very heavily stylized, heavily simplified way, it's still great to have reference image, because if you ask me to just draw an old lady with a walking stick without any reference image, it wouldn't feel quite so believable. I probably wouldn't have got the posture right, the way that where she kind of has her weight, the way she's holding the stick, all of this wouldn't have necessarily felt quite right. So it's really useful to always have reference images, and then take the general body language and the positioning and the vibe, but simplify and make it your own and not feel really wedded to the image, because no one's going to be looking at the original photo and saying, well, actually her chin was down here and her shoulder was up here. Like, no one's going to see the original image, and hopefully it conveys the mood that I want it to. So what I would say is, even if you have absolutely no intention of being a professional illustrator, you just want to work in your sketchbook for fun, being able to draw people in a simplified way keeps things fun, makes it quicker to draw people, helps them fit into scenery without feeling like they are necessarily the focus, or that they've become really detailed and laborious and hard work. Being able to draw people in this simplified way just kind of, for me, keeps things light and fun. And yes, there is a lot of skill in being able to draw a person that is very detailed, very accurate. You know, I've done life drawing, I love it, it's a brilliant skill to have. But on the other hand, being able to simplify is just as much of a skill. I will share some examples in our inspiration chat on Patreon, and in the description of this video, people who really simplify characters, and it's so clever. It's so beautifully done. It takes real skill as much as creating something that's very accurate. And for me, there's something very satisfying in capturing something that kind of feels real, feels observed from life, but is also simplified at the same time. You know, I really enjoy that. So yeah, I think it is a great technique to practice, and I know a lot of people struggle drawing people. They find them tricky, they find them intimidating, they find them hard work, laborious. So maybe taking a bit more of this approach and kind of looking at where you can edit and simplify but still capture the essence of a person can help make drawing people more fun.